In this week's Parsha Miketz, after Joseph interprets the dream of Pharaoh, Pharaoh says to Joseph, "A navon v'chacham kamocha." There is no one as wise as you, Joseph, in the whole of Egypt. And that's why Pharaoh chooses Joseph to be the most important leader in Egypt after Pharaoh himself. But let's think about it. Joseph had just come out of prison. In Pharaoh's eyes, Joseph was just a Jew who was a slave, who was in prison for something he apparently did. But they brought him out to interpret Pharaoh's dream of the 7 skinny cows that ate the 7 fat cows. And Joseph does a great job interpreting that dream. And he interprets it to say that there'll be 7 years of plenty in Egypt and then 7 years of famine. And then Joseph goes on to advise Pharaoh how to save enough food to last and to endure those years of famine. And Pharaoh tells him that, "Joseph, you are one of the wisest men in Egypt," and makes him second in command. But this doesn't make sense. Egypt was the most powerful nation in the world. And just because Joseph was clever, how did Pharaoh know that he could trust Joseph to become his second in command, to become a prince of Egypt? Rabbi Shule explains that Pharaoh saw something special in Joseph. He noticed that whenever Joseph did anything or said anything, like interpreting dreams or giving advice, Joseph never took any credit for himself. He always said everything was with God's help, with Hashem's help. And because of that, Pharaoh realized he was trustworthy. Joseph wasn't showing off. He wasn't just thinking about himself or what he could get out of it. It's a lesson that we can learn from Pharaoh. Pharaoh looked at one character trait of Joseph and made his decision as to what type of person Joseph was. He saw something good and he judged Joseph accordingly. How often do we meet someone, whether at work, at school, or in our social lives, and we see one thing negative, something we don't like, and we immediately make a decision about the whole of that person. We immediately decide what that person is like. But Pharaoh did something amazing. He knew Joseph was in prison. He knew he'd done something wrong. He knew he was a slave. But he saw something good in Joseph. He saw that he was a good person. Some people call this the missing tile rule. When you walk into a room and you see a missing tile, you notice the missing tile, but you don't notice all the beautiful tiles that surround it. Unfortunately, many of us do the same thing. We see one bad thing about a person and we judge them and say, "Oh, they must be that type of person." So Pharaoh teaches us to find something good in a person and use that good thing to judge them, to look through them with that lens. By using this idea, we can change our relationships with anyone we come into contact with. Wishing you all a very good Shabbos.